You've heard console players say this device is overpowered. You've heard PC players like James say it's not overpowered, and you just have to get good. How about you listen to the opinion of a PC KBAM player, who has transitioned to console and played with a controller, went back to PC and console many times, and has tested the Xim device. In a private match against bots, of course, as this device is fun to test, but not fun to use in public match. We'll talk more about that later. Are the Xim 1, 2, 3, 4, Apex, and Matrix devices overpowered? Let me give you an honest and unexpected answer. It depends. There you go, that's my answer. Depends on what? You ask me, as my answer doesn't satisfy you. Okay then, to be more specific. It depends on three things. The game you're playing. How you play that game. And how opposing players play that game against you. Are you still unsatisfied with my answer? Okay. I guess I have to break down everything I just said. Let's start with the games you're playing. In Call of Duty, it's only broken in hardcore and party game modes like snipers only, but in core modes you have a fighting chance to beat the Xim Player. In Apex Legends, which is an ability shooter with a lengthy time to kill, of course you can beat a Xim Player. Aim assist is stronger in that game on lower sensitivities, which automatically favors the controller player. The abilities used at the right time for the right circumstances, will catch Xim players with their pants down. And a well-coordinated squad or party will always be a better advantage than just a better aim input device. In Fortnite, it's 100% overpowered as controller aim assist in that game is stronger than aim assist in any console FPS game in history. On top of that, controller players can't build structures as fast as KBAM players. Don't get me started with Rainbow Six Siege. This game had controller support since launch, but they did not implement aim assist as they wanted this to be a tactical FPS game instead of a run-and-gun user-friendly experience. The Xim throws the necessity of logic out the window and allows people to exploit the latter playstyle. Everybody on console hates keyboarders in that game as controller players don't have aim assist to fight back with. Finally, there is Roblox Phantom Forces console, which was an exclusive port of Phantom Forces made for the Xbox One. Is it also overpowered in that game? Well, surprisingly, it was, but not anymore. When I tested the Xim in that game, it sorta worked in close, to medium range, but only snipers could efficiently kill at any range. Here's why the Xim is not viable in that game anymore. Stylus managed to nerf the device by buffing the controller settings again and again and again and again. Now you cannot find a perfect setting for the Xim in Phantom Forces anymore. Even if you do find a setting that works for you, it will not win you every gunfight against controller players, who know how to use the aim assist efficiently, and they will decimate you. I'll talk about aim assist with a mouse and its Achilles heel in a separate video. Basically, the Xim was cheesy in Phantom Forces, but by the time I finally got an Xbox Series X, a stronger advantage in that game as it is the only next-gen Xbox that can maintain a solid 60 frames per second, they had already nerfed the Xim by buffing the controller settings. Before we move on, the Xim did one thing for KBAM users on Phantom Forces, it allowed you to at least have mouse input with no latency. The game does have mouse and keyboard support without a Xim, but the latency is awful and you cannot change the Roblox engine mouse sensitivity on Xbox, so my S-tier Phantom Forces mouse settings on PC don't carry on into this game on Xbox. Let's move on now. How well you play that game. I can only give one example about this. Have you ever watched a Modern Warfare 3 video from a YouTuber by the name of Enemy MCLA? He has dropped over 5,000 MOABs in that game, but not because he only ever used Xim devices. That is basically the only Call of Duty he ever played. So his knowledge of that game is hard to match, making him a formidable foe to play against. He has put more than 4 times as much game time into MW3 on Xbox than I have put into AW on PC, and you all know how good I am at the latter Call of Duty game. However, that does not make him the best MW3 player of all time, as other controller players have dropped more than 3 times as many MOABs as him, as well as more multi-MOABs in a single match, and have even kicked his ass at that game. It's painful for him to admit that, but even he has admitted that some controller players have easily defeated him. More on this later. Now, on to the last part of my answer. How well controller players play against you. I can only describe examples from other controller players who fought Xim players and won. Tally FTW is a controller player and friend of Enemy MCLA, and they had a series of 1v1 matches in every Call of Duty at the time. Enemy did punch well above his weight as a Xim keyboarder, but Tally made miraculous comebacks and ultimately won as many matches as Enemy did. Add all of the Call of Duty games together, and on paper, it was a draw. They settled the score in a race to Commander on Call of Duty Ghosts, and I still haven't seen the end of it yet, so I don't know who the overall winner is. Another example involves Enemy MCLA again, but this time he was partied up with another friend of his, Reishu MCLA, who was also a Xim keyboarder at the time, and they both played in a party in MW3, getting a few MOABs and a lot of wins in a stream. Until they met this one controller player on the enemy team who goes by the name of iFavo. iFavo effortlessly dropped a MOAB on both keyboarders, making them rage quit, and end their streams. Deus ex machina, anyone? Enemy MCLA would get his revenge on iFavo, 3 months later when the latter session joined the former while he was already on a MOAB streak. Enemy got a revenge MOAB against iFavo. iFavo also MOAB'd Arcom, who was also a keyboard player in the MCLA Clan, at the time. iFavo also MOAB'd at least 2 more MCLA Clan members, who may or may not have been K-BAM players. iFavo is the only MW3 player that I have heard about who has MOAB'd multiple keyboarders and more than one MCLA Clan member. GG to that. Crispy Crossover is another controller player who MOAB'd Enemy MCLA, and got revenge MOAB'd by the latter. They hated each other for a long time, but they squashed the beef and became friends. They even dropped multiple MOABs together in a party. Wonderful. The next example does not involve Enemy MCLA, I promise I'm finished talking about him for this video. In Call of Duty Black Ops 3, there was this all-Xim keyboarder clan who challenged an all-controller clan to a competitive scrim on Fringe. At first, it looked like an easy spawn trap as the Xim players used LMGs and held choke points. The Xim players were not even trying to play the game at that point, but that strategy started to backfire and blow up in their faces, literally. The controller players had better classes, better coordination, and an overall better strategy. They used flanking and dart streaks to clean off the B flag, and got a Wraith in a care package which landed on a Xim player's head, and ultimately solidified the greatest comeback win in Black Ops 3. To add insult to injury, they had a rematch on Nuketown, but this was a way easier win for the controller players, who won 2-0 against the Xim players in one of 2 Call of Duty games where the Xim is actually meta, the other being Infinite Warfare because of the movement mechanics. Those are all of the examples of Xim players getting defeated by controller players. I want to highlight 2 more things. This does not involve a Xim player, but one of the best mouse and keyboard players of all time on PC. We all know who Shroud is, and why he would never use a Xim or need to use one, but even as good as he was no match for Optic Scump, an S-tier controller player, in a Modern Warfare 2v2 gunfight tournament. Shroud was also bested in Rainbow Six Siege by a controller player by the name of Priest, the former only won because of the match timer running out, but the latter controller player was absolutely destroying him. In a game where Xim players on console have an overpowered advantage and people who use the device brag about being the best. Shake my head. Just a moment. You have not heard me mention the word cheating yet? Why is that? Well, because aside from Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege, it is actually not. The Xim device is just as fair and legitimate as using a controller on PC. Legitimately stupid. I have to put up with controller players in the S1X client all the time. They play on less than a 5 sensitivity, which is an absolute pain in the ass. In Apex Legends and core Call of Duty modes, a controller player is deadlier on lower sensitivity because aim assist favors that, and left stick movement, both of which, Xim players don't rely on. As for Xim players on console, I've played against them, I've won against them, I've lost to them, and I've teamed up with them. They are a part of the console ecosystem, and I'd rather play console with a controller against 50% of the player base that are not using regular DualShocks or Xbox controllers, 35% of them using devices like the Coronis or the Xim, instead of playing PC versions of that game. Where 20% of the player base are using aimbot, RCE, doxing, or any third-party hacking software to cheat in the game or attack the enemy players in real life. So I'm totally fine playing against other input players on console in games I know I have a chance at winning. I'll start the game saying good luck, have fun, and end it saying good game. I did encounter one toxic Xim player who shot and teabagged my body. I ended up winning the OBJ against him and we both went negative, but I went less negative than he did as my team had better controller players. He tried to suck my dick that match, and ended up getting a face full of it. If you go negative on console with a Xim or on PC with a controller, then you're just bad at the game at this point. You're only truly good at a game if you use the natural input devices to win, and you're not better than controller players on console if you're using a Xim, or better than PC players if you're using a controller. You're at least good enough if you acknowledge the fact that you've made that personal compromise for using those devices outside of their native platforms, but in the end, it is your game and you play the way you want to play. The Xim is a device for console players who can't use a controller or are making the transition to PC but can't afford one yet. I'm not trying to insult you because I've been there. That's why I bought the device in 2017 when I did not have a functioning gaming PC. Or my dream collection of limited edition Call of Duty co-branded controllers and consoles that I have now, and am proud of using. Back then my old PC died and I bought an Xbox One S at a pawn shop. I will explain more about the history of my gaming setup in another video. Like I said, it's not cheating regardless of how cheesy it is. So honestly, bring it on, bitch. I don't care what you use against me, I love a challenge. Crossplay, on the other hand, is cheating, and I will explain that in, again, its own designated video, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Thanks for making it this far in the video. Sorry if my answer isn't what you expected, or was too long and you didn't listen. That's okay, at least some people did, even if you were not one of them. The footage in the background was my own testing footage of the Xim device against bots in private match, but all of the videos I have mentioned will be referenced in the description below. Please watch them too. Thanks for watching this video, and I will make a sequel video explaining how I got a Xim, why I used it when I did, and 10 reasons why I don't use it to keyboard on console right now. Stay tuned for part 2. Grandmaster Exorcist says hate me.